In 1980, Bob Marley traveled from Jamaica to Zimbabwe and watched police throw tear gas at black people celebrating their own freedom. He kept singing anyway. This is what they don't tell you when they play One Love in coffee shops, when they put his face on t-shirts and sell them to tourists, when they turn revolution into a brand. Bob Marley went to Africa, not once, but twice. And what he found there broke something in him and also made him believe even harder. This is that story. Bob Marley was born in 1945 in 9 Mile, Jamaica, a village so small it didn't matter to anyone except the people who lived there. His father was a white British man. His mother was a black Jamaican woman, 16 years old when Bob was born. Bob grew up in between, not white enough, not black enough, always explaining himself, until he found Rastafari. Rastafari said, "Africa is home. Africa is Zion. You were stolen, but you can return." Rastafari said, "Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, is divine. He represents black dignity, black power, proof that we were kings before they made us slaves." Rastafari said, "Babylon, the system that enslaved us, colonized us, told us we were nothing. Babylon will fall." For Bob, this wasn't religion, it was oxygen. He started making music, not pop, revolution. Songs about mental slavery, about emancipation, and the music spread. In 1980, Bob Marley was famous, not just in Jamaica, everywhere. But nowhere did his music matter more than in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe had been called Rhodesia, named after a British colonizer who stole the land and handed it to white settlers. For 90 years, white people, 5% of the population, owned everything, controlled everything. The black majority fought back, a liberation war that lasted more than a decade. Guerrilla fighters in the bush, hiding in the forest, ambushing Rhodesian soldiers. And in those camps, they had cassette players, battery-powered, barely working. They played Bob Marley. Get Up, Stand Up wasn't a song for them. It was orders. War wasn't music. It was prophecy. And Zimbabwe, a song Bob wrote in 1979 before the country even had that name, became the anthem. When Zimbabwe won its independence in April 1980, the new government wanted Bob there to perform, to witness, to celebrate. Bob said yes immediately. He didn't ask how much he'd pay. He paid his own way, chartered planes, brought his entire band. This wasn't business. This was purpose. But before Zimbabwe, Bob had gone to Ethiopia. December 1978, 2 years before Zimbabwe's independence, he went to see the land Rastafari called Zion, to walk where Haile Selassie had ruled, to connect with Africa slavery had stolen from his ancestors. Ethiopia wasn't paradise. Haile Selassie had been overthrown in 1974, killed probably. The country was in chaos, drought, famine, war. Bob went anyway. He visited Shashamane, a small town in southern Ethiopia where Haile Selassie had given land to black people from the diaspora, a place where Rastas could come home. Bob met Jamaicans there, Americans, people who had actually left Babylon and returned. But here's what Bob saw that Rastafari songs didn't prepare him for. Most diaspora people didn't come back. Out of millions who sang about repatriation, only about 800 lived in Shashamane. And the Ethiopians, they didn't always welcome their returnees with open arms. To them, these weren't long-lost family. They were foreigners. Jamaicans who spoke English, dressed different, didn't know the culture. Pan-African unity was harder than the songs made it sound. But Bob didn't lose faith. He saw the complexity and believed anyway. He came back from Ethiopia with a gift, the song Zimbabwe, written for a country that wasn't even free yet. When the call came in 1980, Bob was ready.
Rufaro Stadium in Harare, Zimbabwe, built for 40,000 people. That night, at least 90,000 tried to get in. Some climbed trees outside, some hung from the fences, some pushed through the gates that couldn't hold them. This was the night Rhodesia would die and Zimbabwe would be born. At midnight, the British flag came down. The Zimbabwe flag, green, yellow, red, black, went up. Prince Charles was there, representing Britain. Leaders from across Africa came. The world was watching. And then the first official words of the new nation were, "Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Marley and the Wailers." Bob opened with Natural Mystic. The crowd exploded. People danced. People cried. This was their freedom, and Bob's music was the soundtrack. Then the tear gas came. Midway through the performance, chaos. Police, black Zimbabwean police, firing tear gas into the crowd. Why? Because thousands of ordinary black people had pushed into the VIP section. Areas reserved for dignitaries, international guests, the elite. The new government, now in power, saw this as a problem. Too many regular people mixing with the important ones, so they gassed them. At their own independence celebration, the smoke filled the stadium. Bob's wife Rita ran off stage, eyes burning. The backup singers fled, band members coughing, crying. But Bob kept singing. He didn't even realize what was happening at first. His eyes were closed. He was in his element. When they finally got him backstage and explained, Bob looked at his band and said, "Now I know who are the true revolutionaries." He meant the people, the ones who pushed through, the ones who refused to be kept out of their own celebration. He waited for the smoke to clear. Then he walked back on stage. And he finished the concert. Because that's what the revolution was about. Not stopping. Not when the British said no. Not when your own people turned gas on you. Not stopping. April 19, 1980. Bob came back. No official ceremony this time. No VIP section. No international press. A free ticket for the people. 100,000 Zimbabweans showed up. Almost all black, almost all poor. The ones who had fought for freedom. Bob played for them the way he always meant to. That concert? Barely anyone talks about it, because the story we tell is about the official ceremony, the dignitaries, the historic moment. Not about Bob coming back the next day to play for people who couldn't afford to be there first time. But that's who Bob was. Bob went home to Jamaica a year later. He was dead. Cancer. He never saw what happened to Zimbabwe. 3 years after independence, Robert Mugabe, the liberation hero, the man Bob had performed for, sent soldiers into Matabeleland, a Gukurahundi. That's what they called it. The rain that washes away the chaff. Between 1983 and 1987, Mugabe's soldiers killed approximately 20,000 Ndebele people, civilians, political opponents, anyone who questioned him. Public executions, torture, mass graves. The 5th Brigade went village to village, made people dig their own graves, shot them, buried them. Mugabe stayed in power for 37 years, rigged elections, destroyed the economy, used violence to keep control. The country Bob had sung for, free at last, became another prison. This is the part that hurts to tell, because it means that winning independence wasn't enough, that replacing white oppressors with black ones isn't liberation, that the revolution Bob sang about was betrayed by the people who won it. Bob's trip to Ethiopia taught him something. Pan-African unity isn't automatic. Diaspora and continents don't always recognize each other as family. Zimbabwe taught him something else, or would have if he'd lived to see it. Freedom isn't guaranteed just because you change the flag. The work doesn't end with independence, it begins there. And here's what Bob knew: you fight anyway. Even when Africa isn't perfect, even when African leaders betray their people, even when the dream is harder than the songs, you fight anyway. Because the alternative is Babylon, and Babylon never stops. Today, Bob Marley's face is on t-shirts sold to tourists, One Love, plays in commercials. His music is everywhere. But the revolutionary part, the part where he went to Zimbabwe and kept singing through tear gas, the part where he paid his own way because he believed in liberation, that part gets left out. Because Burns don't want revolution, he wants vibes. But Bob wasn't vibes, he was a weapon. And he knew that liberation is complicated, that independence can be betrayed, that African leaders can become oppressors too. But he also knew that you don't stop fighting just because the fight gets harder. Mugabe betrayed Zimbabwe, but that doesn't erase the guerrillas who fought for freedom while listening to Bob Marley's music. Diaspora Africans aren't always welcome home, but that doesn't erase the ones in Shashamane still trying to build something. Pan-African unity is work, but that doesn't mean it is not worth working for. But that doesn't mean it is not worth doing. Bob saw all of this, the hope and the heartbreak, and he kept singing. And now you know his story.